Once upon a time, in a small village on the edge of a dense forest, there lived a sweet little girl known to everyone as Little Red Riding Hood. She was called this because of the bright red hooded cloak that her grandmother had made for her. She wore it everywhere she went, and it had become her trademark. One sunny morning, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her over. "Your grandmother isn't feeling well," she said. "I've prepared a basket of food and medicine for her. Could you please take it to her?" "Of course, mother," Little Red Riding Hood replied eagerly. She loved her grandmother very much and was happy to help. Her mother handed her the basket, reminding her, "Stay on the path, and don't talk to strangers." With a cheerful goodbye, Little Red Riding Hood set off on the familiar path through the forest, the basket swinging in her hand. The woods were alive with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. As Little Red Riding Hood walked along the path, she hummed a tune to herself, enjoying the peaceful surroundings. But she wasn't alone. Lurking behind a thick tree was a large, cunning wolf with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. He watched Little Red Riding Hood carefully, licking his lips in anticipation. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf called out in his most charming voice, stepping out from behind the tree. Startled, Little Red Riding Hood stopped and turned to see the wolf standing before her. He didn't look like the other animals in the forest, but she didn't want to be rude. "Good morning, Mr. Wolf," she replied politely. "Where are you going on this fine day?" asked the wolf, trying to hide his intentions behind a friendly smile. "I'm going to visit my grandmother," Little Red Riding Hood answered, holding up the basket. "She's not feeling well, so I'm bringing her some food and medicine." The wolf's ears perked up at this. "How kind of you. And where does your grandmother live?" he asked, trying to sound as casual as possible. "She lives in the little cottage at the end of the path, just past the old oak tree," Little Red Riding Hood explained, unaware of the danger she was in. The wolf grinned slyly. "What a coincidence. I was just thinking of visiting that part of the forest myself. Perhaps I'll see you there." Little Red Riding Hood nodded, then remembered her mother's advice. "I should be going now, Mr. Wolf. I don't want to be late." "Of course, my dear," the wolf said, stepping aside. "Safe travels." As Little Red Riding Hood continued on her way, the wolf's mind began to race with a wicked plan. He knew a shortcut through the forest that would get him to the grandmother's house much faster than Little Red Riding Hood could walk. If he could get there first, he could trick the grandmother and have a feast. With that thought, the wolf dashed off into the woods, moving swiftly and silently through the underbrush. Little Red Riding Hood walked leisurely along the path, stopping now and then to pick wildflowers for her grandmother. She loved the vibrant colors and the sweet scents, and she thought they would cheer her grandmother up. Meanwhile, the wolf reached the grandmother's cottage in no time. He crept up to the door and knocked gently. "Who's there?" called the grandmother from inside. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf replied, mimicking the girl's voice perfectly. "I've brought you some food and medicine." The grandmother, who was resting in bed, didn't suspect a thing.